Hi guys, welcome to this week's tutorial. So this week is part 2 of 4 animal eyes tutorial, and this week we will be focusing on drawing a cat eye. So this is the cat eye over here, the reference photo, and I have all the colors that I use listed over here. This sheet or photo of this sheet is right at the end of the video if you want to have a look at it, but I will also attach it as an attachment to this video on Patreon if you want to download it and have a look. And then the drawing is this one. So I used my Arches watercolor paper, which is a 2 GSM smooth paper, and it's not 100% white paper. It's got a little bit of an ivory tinge, but it's so small, but at least it's not like a stark white color, which I like. I don't like the super white paper. And I think the eye turned out pretty cool. It looks like you can touch it and it'll blink. Now the difference is I'm going to give you guys an attachment of the reference photo, and you will probably notice that the colors are wrong in my drawing. The reason is my printer decided it wanted to go more pink and purple and less orange. So I drew what my printer reference photos colors produced. So I drew these colors, and if you look at the reference photo, it's a lot more orange than it is pink and purple like mine. So I don't know why my printer printed it like this. There are 2 colors that I'm slowly running out of, but I haven't completely run out of them, so it should be using those colors. So I don't know if I need to calibrate it a bit better or what I need to do, but my printer is not printing the right colors. And I noticed the same thing with the horse eye, and that's why I didn't put the reference photo on the top right corner of my video, because the horse eye was a lot more brown and gray than blue and purple, which is many of the colors that I use is blue and purple. So that looked very strange as well. So if you're wondering why the actual reference photos look different, it's because I'm going according to my printed copy and not according to the copy on the computer screen. So I am providing the colors that I've been using on my printed copies, but you may feel like you need to find different colors. But if you don't have the exact same colors, doesn't matter, it's still going to give you a pretty awesome effect anyways, so don't worry too much about it. So yeah, I use my Arches watercolor paper, I use my Prismacolor pencils, my Prismacolor Premier pencils, which are the wax-based pencils. I use my Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils, which are the oil-based pencils. I used my Art Spectrum odorless solvent to blend my colors together, and I used a sharp etching tool to do the fur. Now the first part of the tutorial, before I put any color down, and I don't show this in the video because it's too difficult to see, but I took a sharp tool and etched everything, all the fur around the eye, everywhere. That's the postman if you hear any funny noises. Hopefully my dogs don't bark. I etched everything around the eye. Don't bark. The postman's just having conversation. Shh. I'll show you what they're doing. What's the postman doing, Honey Tay? Honey? Tyler? It's okay, they're going. Perfect little guard dogs, these two. They're gone. Oh, you can still hear them. Anyways, there's a little glimpse into my daily life. The study where I'm busy recording this video now is in the front of the house, and we have nice big windows over here, but it is tinted so no one can see inside, but we can see outside, so the dogs get a full perspective of what's happening. And if anyone comes too close, then the warning signs go off, and it's bark, bark, bark. Although they're the friendliest dogs in the world, but to strangers at least, they shouldn't want to come near my house, hopefully. Okay, so with the first part of the tutorial is the etching part. So I literally scratched out all the areas of fur everywhere. Now, when you're scratching out, take note that some areas of fur are going in different directions. You don't want to draw the fur in exactly the same direction everywhere, because the more perfect you draw it, the less realistic it looks. So if you're going to draw all the pieces of fur in the exact same direction, it's not going to make it look realistic. So take note of some of the pieces of fur that do go in different directions. Now, I do know that it's difficult because when you're doing etching first, there's no color or anything down. It's extremely difficult to see what you're doing. So if you don't get this right, it's okay. If you just sort of manage to get the whole texture down first, that's enough. And the individual strands that you want to get in some different directions later on when you can see a bit better, you can do with your wax-based pencils over the top. So I am going to use the white wax-based pencil I'm going to use is my Caran d'Ache Luminance white wax-based pencil. Your Prismacolor white will work the same. The reason I like using the Caran d'Ache white is because it holds a sharper point for longer and it doesn't break as easy. That's the only reason, but it works just as well. So that's all I did, is I scratched out all those sections with the etching tool, all the fur around the eyes. I didn't scratch anything on the inside of the eyes. So now we can get straight into how I started with the coloring part, and you will see as I start layering colors over the fur that it will start popping out those etched pieces, so you can see exactly how I drew the fur. So let's get started. Okay, so to start off, I am using my black Prismacolor pencil, and it looks like it's sharpened in a really, really weird way, because it is. I used a blade to sharpen my black Prismacolor pencil because it kept breaking on me, and I did sort of want a flatter edge to go along the waterline of the eye because it's a really flat, thin area. So instead of trying to get my Prismacolor really pointy, I got it really flat. I don't know how to explain it, but really flat so that I could go around the edge of the waterline. And so the first step I'm taking is I'm actually going over the areas that are the darkest, the areas that are actually completely black within the drawing, and I'm filling in those areas first, and that's just going to help me determine exactly which area I'm working with on the eye, and it's also going to bring out those different values of the eye. And that's always the first part of anything when I'm doing my underlayering of my drawing before I start layering with solvent or anything like that. I want to get those underlayers of value done, so there's lots of value, and it just makes it easier. And for me, it's easier to do the darker areas first, and then you can see how dark things need to be around it. Especially if you know there's an area that's completely black, do it first, because then it's just, I don't know, I find that it's easier to work around the areas that you know can only be that color, and that's just the way it is. So now I'm using a dark gray to fill in more of the darker values around the eye and straight under the eyelid. And then I'm only putting this down lightly. The pupil of the eye is completely black, so we'll be making that darker with my black Prismacolor pencil. But the other areas that are like the dark cool gray, those are areas that I'm still going to put other colors in there. I'm going to use my dark pinks and purples, and I'm going to put other colors in there to bring it more to life and to make it more realistic instead of just leaving it one color. So that's what's nice, is when you're layering like this, you can keep layering on top of each other, and you don't want to use a firm hand. But with the pupil of the eye, you'll see that I do use a firm hand with the black, because that is completely black. I don't have to add any other colors to it, and I'm happy for that to be black. So now I am using what's that one? PC190, which is quite a dark, like reddish brown color. And I'm going into the areas that have the darkest sort of values within the fur. And you're going to see the more I do this, the more those edge lines are going to start popping out, and you're going to see that texture come out. Now I'm using a salmon color, and that's really gonna bring out the orangey sort of effect, but it's not too bright orange, and it's not too subtle either, so it's really nice. And then the flesh, I'm just filling in all the areas because nothing is completely white, so that's going to be my lightest value, or my sort of my lightest tone. And there again, I use the flesh within the complete area of the eye, and I am going to use salmon. So salmon's going to be my main color within the biggest area of the eye. And I keep layering with the darker pencils, and now I realize that I made a mistake there, so I managed to actually bring my black line down a bit further. And that turned out good because I noticed that the shape of my eye wasn't quite right, but lucky I could fix it and bring that line down a bit more over there. And now, because I know the pupil is going to be completely black, I'm using a very firm hand to actually push that black into the pupil. Using a very, very dark purple, it is my PC 1095. I'm going to go over those gray areas in the eye, and it's going to pop out so beautifully when I put the solvent down. You'll see soon how nice an effect it gives. So going over with that really dark purple red sort of color over the darker values or darker areas of the eye, and that's going to just blend in very well with the surrounding colors. And then again, in the fur, I am going over the areas that are going to be the darkest areas, sort of like the shadows under the fur and the darker areas of the fur. And then the more I do it, again, you see those etching lines are just starting to come out very nicely. Using my salmon color, I'm coloring the entire eye in. I kind of colored in with scribbles. I didn't do it too smoothly because there is sort of a texture in the eye, so I wasn't too worried about it. You don't want it to be 100% smooth. You still want the eye to look like it's got that sort of texture under the glaze. Now, using a beige color, I went over that again just to subtle it down a little because I felt like the orange was a bit too bright within the eye, so that just mellowed it down a bit more. I used a bit of my Prismacolor Wax White there on the waterline or on the bottom of the eye, and that's just to go over the area that I know wants to stay white. Now, using my solvent, this is such a fun part. The first layer of using the solvent really, really brings it to life. So I'm using a flat brush so that I can get those edges of the black in nice and smooth, and then look how that purple just pops right out when you put that down. It really makes that purple and that gray blend in beautifully. And that salmon and that beige just goes in so nicely for the bottom part of the eye. And immediately the eye looks three-dimensional and smooth and glossy, just like that. It's really that simple, and it's such a cool effect. Drawing eyes is so much fun. Like, I think I'd be happy if I just had to draw eyes for the rest of my life. Eyes are just, it's so good because it really brings something to life. That's the one thing that makes something look real. So now with my solvent, I have so little solvent on the brush, like literally the tiniest amount. The brush is almost dry, because if you have too much solvent on your brush and you go and blend like this, it's going to go in all the indented scratch marks that you put on your page, and you're not going to see them. So you don't want to have too much on there because you still want to keep that texture visible. You don't want the color to go in there by having too much solvent on your brush. So have real little amount of solvent on your brush. So there already, with the etching tool, you can see the effect that it's given already. It's made the fur look real. It's come to life, and it looks real, and it looks amazing. Now, another important part is I'm using my white wax-based pencil, and I'm going over all that fur again. I'm going to create the texture, and I'm going to create the fur in all the different directions. Like I would have used my etching tool, I'm going to do the same thing all over the fur areas with the white, because it's easy to go over the white area with some darker values if you want to, but the white is going to create more furry textured look, and it's just, it gives a really good effect, a nice realistic effect. And then if you haven't etched an area, or you haven't done an area that's etched as much as you would like, you can fix it by doing this method, by adding your lighter hairs by using your white wax-based pencil. Now, creating the texture in the eye, again, I'm using my white wax-based pencil, and I'm sort of working in scribbles, but in the right direction, so taking note of my reference. and just creating a little scribbled texture within the eye, and that makes it look really, really cool. So that's as simple as that. You don't have to work between every tiny little texture of something. You really don't. And now that I'm trying to do the darker values within the fur, I don't have to worry about working between pieces of fur to get it to look like it's in the back, because I've already got it scratched on my paper and I already have my white wax-based pencil down. So I can go over it and it will still end up being between the hair. It's not going to go over the white wax-based pencils. It's going to go in the areas that don't have the white wax-based pencils, and it's going to make it seem like it's pushing those shadows into the background, making the highlighted hairs come forward into the foreground, which is giving it that three-dimensional soft furry look, and it just makes it look so real. It's really worth using that method to get the fur to look real, particularly when you're doing cat eyes or cat fur. Now I'm using a bit of red, and just in between some of those white areas, I'm just putting a little bit of that red down just to add a little bit more color in the bottom section of the eye, which is just going to add a little bit more to it in terms of realism. So adding more of the darker purples, and I'm just going to take note now of all the different sorts of values around the fur and the eyes and stuff. And I know I'm going to have to come in with a bit of solvent again, because some of those areas that I created between the fur sort of has a little crayon-y look again, and then the solvent is just going to help me take that crayon look away. So just using a whole bunch of different colors, and literally just taking note of my reference photo and trying to put everything within the right location. Now using a bright orange, I'm going to emphasize the areas around the pupil and the shadows of the eyes, and that's just going to bring that out even more. Remember, whatever colors you have in your background should also reflect in your foreground. So the colors that you have within the eye, you want to put some of those colors around the eye as well. Now again, using my solvent, I'm going to blend all that in, and that's going to take that crayon look away. Remember not to have too much on your brush, and then you'll keep that textured look of the solvent. Blending inside the eye, and now I'm coming back in with my white wax-based pencil and adding extra little highlights to the fur. So here's a slower sort of clip, and that just shows you how I just take my time to just put in individual strands of fur. And I think I've gone missing out of the video, and I'm back. Oh, I do sharpen it a lot, because obviously the wax-based pencils don't have such a sharp point for that long, so I have to sharpen all the time. So that was just me going back. So here's a good real-time little clip of how I do those white strands. Just getting some of them in different directions and just pretty much just going for it. Making some of the strands look random and just put them all over the place, and don't worry about being 100% perfect. You're not going to enjoy yourself if you're trying to get every strand in the exact same place, or every color or every shadow. It's not fun when you do it that way. There's easier methods for you to still get a very realistic look, and no one's gonna notice if you have 2 or 3 strands of hair that aren't exactly the same as the reference photo. So don't worry about those extreme details. So you can see how rough I am with all of it. I'm just pushing it onto the paper. I am pushing quite firmly with the white, because if you don't want another color to go over those highlighted strands of a white wax-based pencil, you want to press firmly, and it does make it more difficult for other colors to go on top of it. But what's nice about this method is it makes it easier for the colors, for you to put another color over the top of it, but it only takes to the paper next to it, if that makes any sense. So if I got a strand of hair that I created with my white wax-based pencil and it's very firm, and I go and draw over and around that strand, nothing's going to happen to the strand, only what's around that strand, around that firmly pressed white wax-based pencil. So it might seem like I'm making everything too light or too highlighted with my wax-based pencil at this point, but like I said, I can go and I can add my shadows in later. I did notice on the bottom of the eye that it wasn't white enough, so in this section here, I'm sort of going to color in a lot of that area to make it look highlighted, way more highlighted, because I put a bit too much color on there, so I'm going to try and save it by going lighter and pretty much just coloring that area in right there. So speeding it up a little bit more, now I'm just showing you what I did with the white. So I pretty much went everywhere again, the whole surface of the area that has fur. And now I can go in and emphasize my shadows and my colors. So these are all the last minute tweaks that I'm going to put into place now to finish the eye off a bit better. I like the way the fur is looking. It's looking very textured. It's looking very, very much like cat fur is supposed to look around the eye. Now I just want to add additional areas of value at the back of the white fur, so you can see that I can sort of go over the white fur and not worry too much because I've put so much of the white wax down firmly onto my paper. I can just sort of go all over it and it will still keep it looking like it's on the top while the rest falls to the back. So just trying to do all the last little touches around the pupil of the eye and the eye itself. And then using a very sharp black pencil, I am signing the artwork. And that is all there is to it. It's actually really, really simple to draw a cat's eye. And I really hope you guys give this a shot for yourself. And you will see that the methods are not that complicated to get a realistic look, and I really, really hope that you guys try it. And if you try it, whether it's with this cat eye or another cat eye, please feel free to post it to my Patreon page and share it with your patrons, because I'm sure that they will want to see, and I want to hear your feedback on it, because I'm sure you will agree that it's a lot easier than what you might have initially thought it would be. So thank you guys so much for watching. The next tutorial coming up is on how to draw the eye of a parrot. So the example that I'm using is the eye of a macaw, and that's a very interesting and weird eye that they have. So I've asked people to guess what it is, and a lot of them have said a lizard. So it is a little bit of a funky looking eye, but I think it's going to be good fun to draw because I haven't drawn one before, and we'll see how all that goes. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.